Why? Panya Wadi Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing of the Sabbath. Barakatha Yahweh Basham Yahweh Shai Asherah Nathanahu Hashabeth Bashalawam the water Aman. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the Sabbath and peace. Thank you, so be it. The Ali Ma'ash Shirai Machad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim Mayimya O Harim Mayan Yebawa Azariah Yebawa Mayahawa Shai Shab Shemayim Warataza La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yela Yanawam Shashramarka Hanab La Yanawam Wala Yashan Shashramar Yashvele Yahweh Shemaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayul Ya Yim Yim Ya Yawamam Hashemash La Kaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makal Rai Yashamar Napasha Yahweh Yashamar Habalakya Wabawa Ayab Ma'aitha wa Aidai Walam Basham Yahweh Shai the water Aman. Psalms 121, a song of degrees. I will lift up mine eyes into the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. Amen. Shema Yasharella, hear, O Israel. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen. Tapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abinawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shanka Yahweh Malakwavkat Taba'ar Rotazawanka Hayya Aisha Barataza Kabashemayim Latamanawa Lacham Yewam Zad wasalak nawa kabawat nawa kasalak nawa kabawat yinawa wala abiyar nawa on the sayawan above hawashai nawa murai kaya laka hamalakwaf wa ala wa thaparaf wa I walam naman. Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner therefore pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Ha'ai the Ten Commandments. La Yahaya Lakab Alahayim Akarim Alapanyat La'ab Fa'aishab Lakab Paso Wala'ab Faibadam La'ab Thalakwakaf Shamwa Yahweh Alahayaka Lashawab Zakar Af Hayawam Hashabath La Kodashwad Kabad Abiyaka Wa Amaka La Thuratazak La Thanaab La Thaganab La Tha'ainad Shakur La Thachamad Ko Asherab La Ra'ayka Aman. Deuteronomy 5 and 7. Thou shalt have none other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Honor thy father and thy mother, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee, that thy days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, neither shalt thou commit adultery, neither shalt thou steal, neither shalt thou bear false witness against thy neighbor, neither shalt thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's house, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen. Yeshabwa, please be seated. Barakate Hawa by Shimi Hawashai, Asharana Finanawa Paria Gapan Thuaraman. La Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Yashar Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Panyua Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakathiyahawa Hagado Rakawam Abiyar Wanawa Aliyawan Malak Shao Shamayim Warataza Wako Dabariam Kayayam Wagam Hamashayak Maya Hawa Arawanawa Ahabnawa Hapalat Yawa Aitaza Yahawashai Zakarnawa Yahawa Bartazawan Ainka Yasha'ala Zarnawa Bana Wasap Yasha'ala O Nanawa Yum Yum Aitha Kayawamyam Makudam Babakusha Shalak Mike Allah Watazawadak Alahayam La Maganawa Rapanawa Washamar Ionawa Bakur Shalak Haruka Shau Yahweh Shai Lanawa Lalamanawa Rabiam Kakama Thabawana Wada Ith Shau the Barka Basham Yahweh Shai Thawada Thum Yed Waiwalam Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hathawarah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awath. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Karan, Hayo, Lakora, Ha'ain. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the olive oil to anoint Israel. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hasheman, Zayath, Lamashak, Yasha'ala, Yeshabwa. Be seated. All right, so Shalom Yasharella. So shalom everyone that's here in Philadelphia. Shalom everyone that's watching us on live stream. And shalom everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Yisrael Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found mainly in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that we fall into a lower state politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in the Bible given to us by Moses, and we come out of this lower state that we fall into by turning back to these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ as our example, as found in the Holy Scriptures, which I'm showing you now. In the English, we like to read the Authorized King James Version, as it's the best translation when compared to the original Hebrew, Chaldee, and Greek. And one thing we try to do, like our Lord and Savior, is keep the Sabbath holy. And as our particular branch of Christ does, we go through a Sabbath service. This Sabbath, we're going to be going into 2 Samuel's again. We're back in the Old Testament. We're going to be going through 2 Samuel's chapters 9 and 10. Once again, 2 Samuel 9 and 10 is going to be our reading for today. And my name's Nabia Zerpabal. I'll be doing the service today. And just make sure you write down for your notes according to the Gregorian calendar that most of us use here in the West. It would be February 25th, 2023. And then for our calendar, it would be the 12th month and the 6th day. So once again, the 12th month and the 6th day. If we count from Sunday sundown, which was the new moon, that means we'll be in the 6th day. So when the sun sets, tonight will be the 12th month and the 7th day, if we're keeping count. All right, so let's go to 2 Samuel's. You'll notice in the title, I call it the Sons of Kings. I was trying to think of something that kind of captured at least what these two chapters would deal with. I was thinking also too of something like kind of like what we did before when we said the enemy of my enemy. This more so being the enemies of my brothers and the friends of my enemies kind of thing. Why do I say that? Because in these two chapters, what we'll see is David making amends with the sons of kings, and in this particular, I'm referring to King Saul, and also him making trying to reestablish an alliance with another nation that came from the king of the Ammonites. So we kind of have an ironic scenario where he was at odds with one of the kings of his own people, our first king, King Saul. And then what's that mean for his descendants that come after him? And then we'll see the flip where he had a certain alliance with the king of Ammon, who today are the so-called Japanese. And then his son that came after him, and how they kind of had a falling out, if you will. So use wisdom. Try to get your friends where you can. But we'll kind of see some examples of how that can play out. But blood is certainly thicker than water. But at the same time, don't take lightly when the Most High changes the heart and mind of a nation to make them what? Show favor, or be favorable towards you. Notice the Most High's will. It's allowing that to happen. And if anything, for your brothers and sisters in the truth, even in the world, try to make alliances and allegiances with them, and try to uphold those things the best you can. But sometimes you'll have scenarios where you have enemies of your own brothers and sisters, and then sometimes you'll have friends of other nations who aren't your brother or sister, right? You guys don't share the same seed of your forefather going back to Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. So even though you might have those opposing scenarios, the Most High is still only dealing with the 12 tribes of Israel in the end of the day. But the key is just to leverage and to make the most of those situations, however they may go. And we'll see how our forefather David, how he handled that. So let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 9. Actually, before I started, let me get this too, because I'm also thinking about with our forefather Joseph back in the day as well, right? You go back to our forefather Joseph, he was instrumental in what? Allowing Jacob and his extended family, or the 70 souls you read about, uh, migrate into Egypt and then populate a region called Goshen, right? Where they could take their herd and their cattle there and to cultivate them. And then in that region of Goshen, we will grow and become a nation, right? We were a big family going in there at 70 souls, right? But then we'll become a nation after being there for 400 plus years. But check out what it says here. This is Exodus chapter 1. I'm going to start at verse 7. Exodus chapter 1 and verse 7, it reads, "And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them." Right? Talking about Jacob and the 70 souls. You read above this. And Joseph was the key one to instrument to be the one to allow this to happen, since his brothers, being jealous, sold him into slavery. But the Most High's hand being on Joseph actually turned a scenario around where he was down for a time, but then the Most High built him up to where he became chief commander in Egypt and was able to secure this for them during a time of drought and famine, secure them being able to go to Egypt and to live live their life abundantly. So that's what we're reading about here, but it's going into what happened as they grew. It says in verse 8, "Now there arose up a new king over Egypt," almost said Pharaoh, but same thing. "A new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph," verse 9, "and he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we." 10, "Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also into our enemies and fight against us, and so get them out of the land." Right? And as you read on, you see what they did as being fearful of what might happen given this notion that they have. So I read that just to show, and we're going to see similar to what we're going to read in 2 Samuel 9 and 10, how, while you might be at a good, you might have a good relationship, or a good, you might be on good grounds with, a certain person, but then when it comes to their successor that comes after them, whether it be, through lineage, or whether it be just through a person they hire to take over their position, say if it's politics or if it's a company or what have you, right? How that new person, that new manager, that new CEO, that new whatever, they may not have the same, interest that the person that came before had, or you may not get along with them as much as you did with the person that was in there before, right? So we as a nation dealt with this in Egypt. And what we'll try to see is how that can change for the better or worse when it comes to those that come after. In this case, we're talking about kings, but it could be over, any type of organization, be it over a country or a company. So that was Exodus 1. I started from 7, and I'll just stop at 10. As you read down, it goes into more detail as far as what they did, as far as putting taskmasters on us and things like that, and making our lives a living hell, even though we're just trying to live our lives and not cause anyone harm. But, Most High blessed us, meaning as a chosen nation, gave us all different types of abilities and attributes, and that strikes fear in the hearts and minds of other nations, right? Because they'll project on us how they think and think that, oh, well, since they're stronger, clearly they want to, or they might think about taking us over, or like we read, getting some kind of a alliance with our enemies, and then they could pretty much turn us upside down since they live in our land. So now, 2 Samuel chapter 9, in verse 1, it reads, And David said, Is there yet any that is left of the house of Saul, that I might show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? So David's considering here who is left of the house of Saul, that he may show them kindness for Jonathan's sake. Jonathan being the son of Saul, and we know him and Jonathan, they never had any issue, right? They were very close, right? It says their souls were like knit together. We read it back in 1 Samuel. So he's questioning this, right? Because he's building himself up. And as he's dealing with different nations, right? As we read in the previous chapter last time, he's also trying to see what amendment he can make with any Israel that he might have been at odds with, namely the house of Saul. He says in verse 2, And there was of the house of Saul a servant whose name was Ziba. And when they had called him unto David, the king said unto him, Art thou Ziba? And he said, Thy servant is he. And the king said, Is there not yet any of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God unto him? And Ziba said unto the king, Jonathan have yet a son which is lame on his feet. Right? So he reached out to those that remained of the house of Saul, and he touched base in particular with a man named Ziba, right? Who was a servant to the house of Saul, right? And remember, we're talking about Judah and Benjamin, right? Today, if you look at a 12 tribes chart, Judah being descendant of mainly what we call the so-called Black Americans, and Benjamin being descendants of what we call the so-called West Indians, right? Just so we can kind of picture it today, who those people would be today, so we can kind of picture it in our mind as you read about it back then. So he mentions to him a son that Jonathan had. It says that he was lame on his feet. And just to make a link to this verse here, in chapter 9, in verse 3, we read this before in 1 Samuel chapter 20. If you go back to it, 1 Samuel chapter 20. Wait a minute. Sorry, I went back too far, guys. 2 Samuel chapter 4. Here we go. 2 Samuel chapter 4 and verse 4. This is what we read about him. You can link that with 9 and 3. So we have the record here, chapter 4, verse 4, but now we're going to see what's going to happen between him and this son of Jonathan, grandson of Saul. So this is 2 Samuel chapter 4 and verse 4. It says, And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. He was 5 years old when the tidings came of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel, and his nurse took him up and fled, and it came to pass, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and he became lame. And his name was Mephibosheth, right? He's going to be the figure we read about mainly in this chapter 9 of 2 Samuel, right? This Mephibosheth. So somewhat reminiscent of what we see in John, with St. John 9 and 1, where we can see how misfortune can befall a person or even befall a person's children based on their words and deeds, right? As they asked about the question, the person who was blind from their birth. It could be something that happened to them as far as when they're born or even when they're young, where they ask Christ the question, who did send this man or his parents that he was born blind, right? So even though we're all judged for our own sin, the things that we do or don't do in righteousness, right, can also affect those that come after us, right, if we're not careful. And we can look at ourselves, for many of us that grew up in the world, where our parents were in the world, when we learned the truth, we realized certain things that we probably would have said or did differently, right? Or we might have considered or asked, when it comes to our folks or our parents, why didn't you say or do things differently, so that I would have that edge, knowing that who I was as a person, who I was as a nation, to know how to go about doing things in the world, right? So it's like a learning curve that we have to compensate for if we've been called into this truth. But all praise to the Most High in Christ by what the Holy Spirit and their mercy, and He gives us a chance to do that even still, right? Because when it comes to our folks, they work with what they had, right? They work with what was shown to them, right? Even though they may have sought the truth out in their own way, it's up to the Most High whether or not He wants them to see their truth in this lifetime. But He gave us a chance to see it in our lifetime. So as tough as it may be, and as the adjustments we have to make, and the chastisement we have to go through to be proven, to make sure that we do indeed want to follow that path, that straight and narrow path of being an Israelite, that we're just appreciative of that opportunity. Because you go back far enough, there was a time in our ancestry when we knew better and didn't do better, right? And then we fell to the lowest state that we find ourselves in now as a people. But let's go back to 2 Samuel chapter 9. Now I'm in verse 4. It says, "And the king said unto him, Where is he? And Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lo-debar." Right? So he told him of the location as far as where he was staying at, which I think you on the map, which we'll probably go more into the map when we get to the next chapter. But Machir, that name, when you look it up before, you see that it's one of the ancestors of Manasseh. You go into the lineage of Manasseh and their descendants that came down. So you go into the history of that name, and that name will come up more than once within that family line. You'll see other names repeated within family lines too. Even names of the patriarchs come back again. You'll see that in different tribes, or that different tribes might take the name of one of the patriarchs of another tribe, right? Because they're all Hebrew names, of course, but sometimes you'll see names come back, or names, new names will be taken when it comes to certain families in Israel. So now this is 2 Samuel chapter 9. Now we're going to read verse 5. So in verse 5 it says, "Then King David sent and fetched him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lo-debar. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, was come unto David, he fell on his face and did reverence. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, Behold thy servant." Right? So we see Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, coming to David humbly. You see he fell on his feet before him, right? Obviously, I guess acknowledging him as, the new king. And I'm guessing having some understanding as far as his father Jonathan, who's at this point deceased, and how he received him, right? So we see David greeting him earnestly as well. It says in verse 7, "And David said unto him, Fear not, for I will surely
Show thee kindness for Jonathan thy father's sake, and restore thee all the land of Saul thy father, and thou shalt eat bread at my table continually. Right? So, must be a tough scenario, right? Where from Mephibosheth's position, we see him humbling himself before David, but at the same time, you know, since they haven't really spoken in a while, or maybe the last time they spoke, he was a lot younger. Doesn't really give us a time frame specifically here, but you know, David could receive him all types of ways, right? He didn't know. It's not. It's tough to say whether or not he'll deal with him mercifully or not, right? I'm guessing he was hoping that he would, but I'm sure his father Jonathan had nothing but good things to say about him, right? At least while he was alive, based on what we have in the record. But now, as we're seeing here, David showing kindness unto Mephibosheth, saying that what? I will restore thee all the land of Saul thy father, and ye say ye shall eat bread at my table continually. Right? So him trying to form that connection and build that connection back with them. Because we know when we go back into the chapters of Second Samuel, they had that falling out when it came to Abner, Saul's general, right? To where they dealt kindly with each other, right? They sat down and broke bread, but then you had Joab, his general, his captain of the host, who slew him with guile to get revenge for Asahel's brother, right? So anyone of the house of Saul is, it's kind of, there's going to be a question when it comes to, okay, how is he going to deal with us? You know, we see what he's doing on his own part, but, I know it's him and it's his cabinet and those that are part of his cabinet, part of his leadership, we're still going to be at odds with each other. But let's see his response though. It says, and he bowed himself and said, what is that servant that thou shouldest look upon such a dead dog as I am? Right? So humbling himself once again before David, knowing that that they're at odds with each other. But like I said, his hope being that he could achieve or receive that mercy from David. Right? It's interesting because it's almost like a parallel to how David came before King Saul when Saul was king, when he had put it out there to all the men saying, whoever will take out this Goliath, you know, I will allow him my daughter Michal for wife to be a wife. And then I think even before that, even him calling him to be his armor bearer, right? As far as putting that challenge out there to slay Goliath, right? Where David King Saul welcoming David into his household, and then eventually uh, allowing him his daughter Michal to wife. You see David pretty much saying, coming humbly in a similar regard, saying, who am I in Israel that I should be, the son of the king, right? As far as the son-in-law. So it's interesting how it's kind of that scenario is kind of flipped there. But it says in verse 9, the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said unto him, I have given unto thy master's son all that pertained to Saul and to all his house, right? Because every tribe had an inheritance, right? You had a plot of land, right, for each tribe. But then within that plot of land, you had different landmarks that dealt with borders for, these families of a particular tribe, right? So that's what he's putting into order to have that be restored to him. And he's telling Ziba, Saul's servant, to get it underway, right, and to handle whatever paperwork, whatever things were necessary to do it. It says in verse 10, now therefore, rather, thou therefore and thy sons and thy servants shall till the land for him, and thou shalt bring him the fruits, that thy master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, thy master's son, shall eat bread always at my table. Now it says Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants, right? So this man Ziba, he was a wealthy man, right? And he was a fruitful man, as we see here, right? In more ways than one, not only with children, but as far as wealth, right? To have 20 servants. So he's helping out his household, but then he's giving the special treatment towards Jonathan's son Mephibosheth. Verse 11 says, Then said Ziba unto the king, According to all that my lord the king hath commanded his servant, so shall thy servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all that dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants unto Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he did eat continually at the king's table and was laying on both his feet. Right. So yeah, he still had that lameness, like we read before, as far as that injury he had when he was young. But we see the David building that bond back with the house of Saul, right? Because yeah, they might have been in war before, but if it's possible to strike an alliance or to, build a bond back, then go for it, right? Whatever's broken down can be rebuilt again, right? If there's a will, there's a way. So that was 2 Samuel 9. So let's get into chapter 10 as well. So we have that scenario, right? Where we have the son of the king, Mephibosheth, coming into agreement or coming into alliance along with King Saul's, or the formerly King Saul's servant Ziba, to now be at peace. Whereas before they were at odds, now they're at peace. So now let's see the scenario we're going to read about in chapter 10. Now 2 Samuel chapter 10 and verse 1, it says, And it came to pass after this that the king of the children of Ammon died, that Hanun his son reigned in his stead. So now we've got some other nation, right, that was outside of Israel. So we had the Canaanites who were mainly in our land, right, that we took out most of them, but some of them remained. Then we had the surrounding nations too, which when you go into the law, it says when we would go against them, first it says that we will proclaim peace into them first, right? And it said they received us in peace, and acknowledged our authority and said, all right, we acknowledge you children of Israel, and we'll pay you tribute and everything else, you're God's chosen people, no problem. Then we wouldn't make war with them. But if they did the opposite and said, oh, the hell with you guys, we're going to do our own thing, right? And we don't want to acknowledge your power, your authority, that's when we could make war with them. So it was different scenarios, right? But when it came to Canaan, Most High said, don't take any shorts with them. I just want them out. And before I get into that, I'll touch on that real quick before we get into chapter 10. First, we go to Deuteronomy chapter 7. Deuteronomy chapter 7. I'm just going to read verses 1 to 5. It's dealing with how we dealt with Canaan and those Hamites that were in the land of Canaan. So Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 1, it reads, When the Lord thy God, or in the Hebrew, Yahweh thy power, shall bring thee into the land where thou goest to possess it, and has cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord, or when Yahweh thy power, shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Right? So the Most High laying the law out when it comes to how we're supposed to deal with Canaan. Because you read in other places, they had a judgment to undergo themselves, right? Being in the land, but then at the same time, not dealing with the land in righteousness, as it was the Most High's favorite place. It tells you in other scriptures that his eye was always there. But it was mercy shown towards us, but it was because of the wickedness of the Canaanites that were in the land he loved most, which is why he wanted them out. He wanted to use us as an instrument to get them out of there. And it went back to the promise that you read about that he made with Abraham, our forefather, right? Back when Abraham was just a man in a household, he told him, "Your descendants are going to inherit this land in the future." So all that had to come to pass. Reading on in verse 3, it says, "Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son." So the Most High is saying, don't make marriages with them either, right? And when it comes to your children, when they come of age, don't have them marry the children of their people, right? Now, reading that, we might say, "Oh man, the Bible. Oh man, that's pretty racist," right? See, that's why I don't deal with that book. See, that's messed up. But we don't realize that we're raised in lies in this modern day Babylon, which they call America, where they teach and promote these things as far as being interracial, as far as getting with those that are outside your nation. But the Most High said no. He divided the nations their inheritance, that he separated the sons of Adam. The way we interact with other nations, we can do that on a level of, say, trade and things like that. But as far as marrying into their families, the Most High said don't do that, because we go into the laws of inheritance. Only you can maintain an inheritance within your tribe, and then this goes for the other nations too. But focus on mainly on Israel. The only way you could maintain that is by uh, having your sons marry those within the same nation. Because even if you were to marry a woman of another tribe, which you could do, but it would be acknowledged or known that any children that she bear would be of the tribe of that particular nation, whatever her husband is. And we have a scenario that you read about in Numbers towards the end. You had a man, I think of Manasseh, named Zelophehad. He had only daughters, so they had a question about that. And that's how they rectified that. They said, make sure to keep the inheritance in the family so that Zelophehad's daughters don't lose the inheritance of their father, that they marry those of their father's brother's sons, so they can stay within that tribe and stay within that family. So that's what the Most High would have us do. And as like I said, when you look at that and consider that wisdom behind that law, you get more insight into, okay, this is how the Most High deals with us. This is how the Most High deals with nations, as far as keeping that inheritance within that family. That's why it says in verse 4, "But they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of Yahweh be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly." Then it says in verse 5, "But thus shalt ye deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars and break down their images and cut down their groves and burn their graven images with fire." So they deal with idols. And when you hang around folks, let alone marry them, those poor, wicked behaviors will rub off on you, to where you'll start dressing how they dress, right? Keeping customs that they keep, eating foods that they eat, animals that they eat, that the Most High said don't, but then you see them doing it, you get tempted to do that. And this wasn't heeded to all the time. In most cases, it wasn't, unfortunately. And we read that as you go on in this history, in the Judges, you'll read examples like that. And then they'll go back to the Lord, the people, our ancestors, will say, "Lord, these Canaanites are vexing us with all these weird practices that they're into," right? And Most High is like, "Didn't I tell you what to do way back before you guys even got to Canaan? I told you that this would happen, right?" But we still complain to the Lord about it. But stay in Deuteronomy. And let's get this law. It goes into how we're supposed to deal with the other nations. Deuteronomy chapter 20. And we'll read down to, from verse 10, and we'll read down to verse 18. This is going into the protocol for nations besides Canaan that were in the surrounding countries that surrounded Israel. So Deuteronomy chapter 20 and verse 10, it reads, when thou comest nigh unto a city to fight against it, then proclaim peace unto it. Verse 11, and it shall be, if it make thee answer of peace and open unto thee, then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. So they'll pay tribute. We go through the history in the Maccabees, we see examples of this, right? Where the sons of Mattathias, Judas and his brethren, when they stood up against the Greeks and fought against them and established Israel, right, back for them, they will fight with different nations. And then when they will fight with them, namely the Greeks, there will be others too, they will proclaim peace and say, okay, we see the Most High is dealing with you. Don't slaughter us anymore. Okay, fine. We'll give you this. Any laws or any, embargoes we put on you, we release them, right? So when they would do that, Judas would acknowledge that. Jonathan and Simon would acknowledge that afterwards, just like we're reading here in the law. But anytime they broke that contract and went against it, we adjusted accordingly and got back into a war frame with them instead of a frame of peace we may have established before. So they shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. Then it says, and if it will make no peace with thee, but will make war against thee, then thou shalt besiege it, right? Like we were talking about earlier. And when the Lord, or when Yahweh thy power hath delivered it into thine hands, thou shalt smite every male thereof with the edge of the sword. It says in 14, but the women and the little ones and the cattle and all that is in the city, even all the spoil thereof, shalt thou take unto thyself, and thou shalt eat the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, which we're reading about already in Samuel's, and like we're reading about in Maccabees, we're seeing this pretty much being implemented. It says in 15, thus shalt thou do unto all the cities which are very far off from thee, which are not of the cities of these nations, but of the cities of these people which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance. Thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth, but thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. That's what we read in Deuteronomy 7. It's just repeating it here. Then in 18, that they may teach you not to do after all their abominations, which they have done unto their gods, so shall ye sin. So should ye sin against the Lord your God. Right? Not saying so you should sin, meaning in other words, meaning you would sin if you were to allow them to live and follow what they do. It says Deuteronomy 20 in verse 10 to 18. To go along with Deuteronomy 7, 1 to 5, as far as how we would deal with these other nations. But emphasis on what we read in 20, let's go back to 2 Samuel 10. We're dealing with the relationship we had with this nation, Ammon, who today will be what they call the so-called Japanese. You go into these people. So 2 Samuel 10 and 1, after we read those, it says, and it came to pass after this that the king of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his stead. So once again, we're dealing with the sons of kings, the succession going down. So we dealt with the grandson of King Saul. Now we're dealing with the son of this heathen king of Ammon named Hanun. Verse 2, then said David, I will show kindness unto Hanun, the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness unto me. See that? So now this Nahash, who was his father, the king of Ammon before him, it says he showed kindness unto David, right? So they were on good terms. So he said, oh, okay, I'm dealing with the son of him, so I'll show him good terms too, right? If he's if it's, as they say the expression, chip off the old block, right? I want to show him kindness as well, right? For his father's sake. It says, and David sent to comfort him by the hand of his servants for his father. And David's servants came into the land of the children of Ammon. And the princes of the children of Ammon said unto Hanun, their lord, thinkest thou that David doth honor thy father, that he hath sent comforters unto thee? Have not David rather sent his servants unto thee to search the city and to spy it out and to overthrow it? Because remember, David has a name at this point, right? We already read about a couple battles that he did already, right? Going back to chapter 8, as far as them establishing themselves and who they were fighting with. Syria, namely, as well as Edom, right? So this is the suspicion that they have, that this is a why behind what David's doing, right? It says in verse 4, wherefore Hanun took David's servants and shaved off the one half of their beards and cut their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. Check that out. Talk about hospitality, right? So we know in the law, it talks about we're not supposed to bald our head or bald our faces. But now to cause shame to these messengers of David, they cut it halfway. So, I'm surprised they don't have this yet, because I know there's been different hairstyles that become popular, like mohawks or, things like that come and gone. But imagine that you got half your hair is just bald on one side, half your mustache gone, and half your beard gone. And they do it to your garments too, to where you're partly exposing yourself, exposing your nakedness. And then now you have to be out there. I mean, that's that's pretty messed up. I know for a lot of Israel, they can relate, be you a boy or a girl, going to school, and you don't have your hair, you don't have your hair a certain way. We know our fellow brothers and sisters in Israel, they can be a tough crowd, right? They can, roast you for, if your clothes aren't clean, or if they're not, the fanciest clothes, because your folks are working hard, or you got other affliction you might be dealing with, and you get roasted big time. But now look at this: cutting their garments and then balding their beards. But now, just as far as the cutting off the facial hair, you can just get this real quick. This one's for the priests, and then we'll get one for for Israel in general, but it's more or less the same. We'll go back to Leviticus chapter 21. Leviticus chapter 21. In verse 5. So Leviticus 21 and 5, when you read 21 and 1, it reads, and the Lord or Yahweh spake unto Moses, speak unto the priests, the sons of Aaron. So that's the subject. So that's what he's talking about. We're talking to in this chapter, in case we're wondering. And say unto them, there shall none be defiled for the dead among his people. Right? Going into becoming unclean, coming near a dead body. And not only just any dead body, but even for those of your immediate family. But jumping down to verse 5 is the law that I want specifically. It says, they shall not make baldness upon their head, neither shall they shave off the corner of their beard, nor make any cuttings in their flesh. Right? So, we have tattoos now, but you also have markings too that they would do for different reasons, namely to remember the dead. And you see that being a Hamite custom even to this day, where you'll see them make little cuts for the dead. I know there's a movie that came out, one of those Marvel movies called Black Panther, right? and you got Michael B. Jordan playing this character called Killmonger. He's the enemy, and he takes off his shirt in the movie, and you see, because these cats are supposed to be like Hamites, so to speak. Even you might have Israel playing the roles of the special Hamite nation that was group around a special mineral, right? In the movie, so they're able to become more advanced than the rest of the world with the help of this mineral rich land that they lived in, right? But one of his trademarks was when he took off his shirt, you would see he had these little cuts all on his chest and arms and things like that. And he would say, like he said in the movie, all these cuts represent a kill that I've had, since I've been in the military and special ops and all the stuff that I've been doing. So seeing that kind of made me think back to this law as far as making cuts in your flesh for the dead. But Leviticus chapter 19 as well. Leviticus chapter 19 in verse 27. And I'll read 28 too. Leviticus 19 and 27 reads, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads." This head's talking about the hair on your head. You look up the word head, it's got many definitions. Just like we read about the breakdown of Christ, it says his head and his hairs. The head is talking about the hair on his head. The hair is talking about the hairs like on his face and like on his arms and stuff like that. So head can also mean the hair on your head. Thou shalt not round the corners of your heads. Just make sure we know we're not thinking that's talking about, because I think you can read about that too, but that's not what that's talking about here. Certain people that'll try to shape the head of the baby by using certain, tools and stuff like that to make the head a certain shape. That's not what that's going into. So it says, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." So if you're gonna cut your hair or cut your facial hair, right? Nothing wrong with keeping it neat. Not nothing wrong with a lineup. We just say make sure that when you do the lineup, it goes according to your natural hairline, right? Don't push it back or make it a funny shape or do zigzags or stuff like that, or bald parts of it. That's what it's talking about. It says in 28, "Ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord, or I am Yahweh." So that's what we're talking about in Leviticus 21 and 5 for the priests also. But the emphasis being on the balding your head. And then I'll give you this one too, and then we'll go back. This is Exodus Exodus chapter Exodus chapter 20. This is going into making sure we put on breeches. When we wear a garment, we want to make sure we had our breeches on too. Otherwise, people will see a nakedness underneath. So we will put on breeches, which were like pants. Uh, some cases, what they would call like cargo, not cargos, but I mean they were in fashion for a little bit. People had jokes about them, but those capri pants, where they cut off around the knees, where they go down a little bit lower, right? But we'll wear these underneath our garments, right? And it's going to speak to that here when you read this in Exodus chapter 20, in verse 26, for example. Sorry about that. So it's Exodus chapter 20 and verse 26. It says, "Neither shalt thou go up by steps unto mine altar." You read above, it goes into how we will make makeshift altars, not so much the altar of burnt offering that the sons of Aaron used, but just we will make an altar ourselves, like what you read about what Noah did, or like what Jacob did, or others. Neither shall thou go up by steps into mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. Right? So I know you've done those steps a couple times, right, brother? You've done your exercise with the famous Rocky steps, right? So you're going up steps, you have breeches on, right? But if you just had your garment on, like a garment that went over, but then you're going up and someone's going up behind you, and God forbid, a gust of wind comes, right? And people see all your business. That's a problem, right? And it goes without said, of course, for the sisters, right? You want to make sure you have something underneath your dress too. But we wanted to make sure we have breeches on uh, underneath our garments so that our nakedness wasn't discovered. Just so we kind of have an idea of the shame that these brothers were put through by what this Nahash did to them by having them be shaved and then have their clothes cut in half too. And then let's get this also in Exodus. Go forward a little bit. Get Exodus chapter 28. Send a reply back real quick. So this is Exodus chapter 28. And I'll start from verse 40 where it reads, "And for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats, and thou shalt make for them girdles and bonnets, shalt thou make for them for glory and for beauty." So going into the headpiece they would wear, as well as the garments and the girdles they would wear. They were special linen garments that they wore. 41, "And thou shalt put them upon Aaron thy brother and his sons with him, and shalt anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office," which the next chapter goes into how he went about to consecrate them, the different offerings they had to present to be considered like a priest, almost like a priest test, right? To be proven to be one that could work within the tabernacle and later on the temple. Reading on, it says, verse 41, "And thou shalt put them on Aaron thy brother." I read this. Verse 42, "Thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. From the loins even to their thighs they shall reach." That's what I was talking about as far as like the shorts that come to your knees, right? At least. That's what they would have to wear underneath. That's what we're reading about Exodus 20 when they talked about making the altar. It says, 43, "And they shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons when they come in unto the congregation, the tabernacle of the congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not iniquity and die. It shall be a statute forever unto him and his seed after him." Right? So there's the law on that. But now let's go back to 2 Samuel 10, because we're talking about nakedness and being made bold, or boldness. Intentional boldness, not the boldness that we can't help. Right? We can't be judged for that. It's more so going into you doing it yourself or someone doing it to you against your will. Now, 2 Samuel chapter 10. I'll read verse 4 again, and then I'll read verse 5. So 2 Samuel chapter 10 and verse 4 it reads, Wherefore Hanun, who was the son of this Nahash, who was the king of Ammon, who David had a friendship with, or I say he showed him kindness. I'll word it the way they worded it, right? The way it's worded in the scriptures. But now his son Hanun didn't, and thought they were trying to spy out the land when he sent servants. It says, It took David's servants or his messengers and shaved off one half of their beards and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. So he went into the laws about covering up and not balding your head. And it says in 5, when they told it unto David, he sent to meet them because the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, Tarry at Jericho until your beards be grown, and then return. Right? So to prevent their shame, David said, okay, they did what? All right, we're going to handle it. But now check it out. Don't worry, just abide at Jericho, which was close by, right? Just stay there for a time, let your hair come back, and then, get whatever garments that you need since they did that, and then return, right? So that, you're not coming back into the town. Everyone's just like looking, what happened to David's servants, right? How humiliating. Reading on to verse 6, and when the children of Ammon saw that they stank before David, I mean, what do you expect, right? Like they said, don't kill, don't hurt the messenger. I'm just here to deliver a message. You go and bald half their head and cut half their clothes. So yeah, you're gonna stink before David, right? You guys are gonna be at odds at this point, obviously. It says the children of Ammon sent and hired the Syrians of Beth Rahab and the Syrians of Zobah, 20,000 footmen, and of King Maacah 1,000 men, and of Ishtar 12,000 men. Right, so they paired up or buddied up with the other nations about them. Namely, here we see Syria or the Aramites being employed, which we already had battles with them. We read that back in chapter 8, how we found favor with one of those guys because he was at odds with the guy who was in charge of Syria. So we teamed up with him against the other Syrians, and then that other Syrian showed us tribute or showed us respect. I think we read that back in chapter 8. We read it last time. Reading on, it says, and when David heard it, he sent Joab and all the host of the mighty men, Joab being his captain of the host. 8, and the children of Ammon came out and put the battle in array at the entering of the gate. And the Syrians of Zobah and of Rahab and Ishtar and Maacah were by themselves in the field. When Joab saw that the front of the battle was against him, before and behind, he chose all the choice men of Israel and put them in array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he delivered into the hand of Abishai, his brother, that he might put them in array against the children of Ammon. And he said, if the Syrians be too strong for me, then thou shalt help me. But the children of Ammon be too strong for thee, then will I come and help thee. So a clever stratagem being employed by Joab and Abishai, to where once they found out they were trying to surround them, come at them from both sides. They kind of did a back-to-back, if you will, right? Where they're fighting back-to-back, and then they have their troops in formation set in array, right? Working both sides, and that they'll support one another depending on who is dealing with the stronger force, right? It says in 12, verse 12, be of good courage and let us play the men for our people and for the cities of our God. And Yahweh do that which seemeth him good, right? So we fight for, that's an expression you hear even said today, right? For God and country, right? You hear that in like different, military regiments. They'll say, we do it for God and country. So that's pretty much what they're saying here, right? That's where this comes from. And we said it and did it before the true and living God, right? Not some idol. 13, and Joab drew nigh, and the people that were with him, unto the battle against the Syrians, and they fled before him. And when the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fled, they fled. Then fled they also before Abishai, and entered into the city. So Joab returned from the children of Ammon and came to Jerusalem. Right. So a victory won by some of David's top warriors. Right. And I think when we go back to here, we see this is and I posted a link at the top, and I make mentions to this atlas. If you guys don't have a hard copy of the atlas, because you can find them, they're pretty expensive online, and usually the more expensive they are, the more details they have. But this is an online one that you can access. I'm just using this kind of as a reference so I can share the screen. A PDF that was put together that has so it's pretty good. But if you look here on the map at pretty much numbers 8 and 9, which is kind of towards the middle and towards the right, you'll see these places where we fought with Ammon. You see these other nations being mentioned that teamed up with them. You see Maacah up here at the top. You see Beth Roheb. You see Aram, which is another name for Syria, and you got Damascus, which is even their capital city, even to this day, right? But they teamed up with Ammon against us, and that's where we're fighting them at. You look on the map. And I'll leave it up for a second so the brother he can get a closer look. So you see Aram right here. You got Damascus, the land of Tob. You got Ammon over here, and you got down here. This is one of their chief cities called Rabbah, where we fought battles. Here's another city too, but that's this is during the time of Saul. But the areas that are green are dealing with the conquest of David that he fought. And there's Zobah right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we touched on this map when we read back in 2 Samuel 8 as well. But we'll revisit this as we go throughout 2 Samuel anytime we read about the different battles that he fought. So you can see how they traveled, how they fought, and how they defended each other. Like we're talking about Joab and Abishai. And here's Jerusalem right here in the middle that folks will come back to after they fought their battles. Okay, so let's go unshare this. Let's get back to scriptures. Reading on in verse 15, it says, and when the Syrians saw that they were smitten before Israel, they gathered themselves together, and Hadarezer sent and brought out the Syrians that were beyond the river, and they came to Helam. That's what we were looking at earlier on the map. And Shobak, the captain of the host of Hadarezer, went before them. So that's his captain of the host, this guy Shobak. And when it was told David, he gathered all Israel together and passed over Jordan and came to Helam. And the Syrians set themselves in array against David and fought with him. And the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew the men of 700 chariots of the Syrians and 40,000 horsemen, and smote Shobak, the captain of their host, who died there. Right? So that's what we're looking at, going more towards the top. If you guys didn't see it before, I'll show you again. Yeah, if you see number 6 and number 7 now, if I zoom in, that's what this is showing here in the middle. And there's Helam right there next to the battle, which is the little red circle with the swords going through it. Here's where Helam is. So number 6, number 7 are pretty much pointing at the battles that we fought against them at this point. And this one talking about the battle that they fought earlier in chapter 10. So it says they fought their soldiers back, and it shows you how many they had, right? They had a pretty big force, right? 700 chariots of Syrians, 40,000 horsemen. It says they smote Shobak, the captain of their host, who died there. So that's always good when you take out the general, right? Because that's what caused the nations to scramble at that point. They got to figure out, who was Shobak's top generals to see who's going to replace him, right? Who's going to be his second in command. Now get bumped to first in the command. Finally, in 19, and when all the kings that were servants to Hadarezer saw that they were smitten before Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. So the Syrians feared to help the children of Ammon anymore, right? So they learned their lesson, and now they're following suit with what we read in Deuteronomy 20, where they said, okay, let's proclaim peace, because we tried to double team them, right? And it ended up backfiring, right? And they whooped our behinds, and they said, okay, no more of this. Okay, Israelites, you got it, right? You guys are thorough. Okay, we'll take the knee. Here's tribute, right? And David, was like, all right, we acknowledge that. If it happens again, it's going to happen again. So that's the rules of engagement, right? You have other nations that talk about rules of engagement, right? And modern warfare and ancient warfare, but our law has that covered too. That's what we read in Deuteronomy 20 earlier, right? Yeah, we finished already, but we've come to the end of the reading for this week. But just keep in mind, I know we talked about it during the classes, Tuesdays and Fridays, but remember that we have the Day of Judas coming up this weekend, coming up on the 13th, right? So we know we're in the 6th day right now, so you can probably figure out what day at sundown the 13th is, right? So it's pretty much going to be next weekend, 7 days from now, and then the 12th month and 13th day, and then we're going to have Purim after that, which is going to be the 14th day and the 15th day. So just make sure that you're ready for those holy days, which we're going to be keeping next weekend coming up, going into the early next week. And I'll send out text messages, 3 days prior, just that you guys know, like I usually do for the new moons and other things like that. So yeah, make sure you're ready for the Day of Judas as well as Purim, which is coming up. And yeah, and every Tuesday and Friday from 7 p.m., which I'll put down here in the banner. We have a free class, which I know some of you that are watching right now have already dialed into, but for folks that may not be familiar, every 7 to 10 p.m., Tuesday and Friday. And we have here the number that we dial into for those classes. If you need to see it again, just take it back to the end of the video before we did the prayers. And then if you want to make donations to the school for different reasons, for holy days and whatnot, by check or money order. At the bottom, we have the address to the school that you can send it to. And make sure you get the spelling here. Spell it that same way, Hayashra Kanas. If you're going to write a check or money order, since that's the name under the account. And then if you want to do it online, we have this one too, which is paypal.me/HYK12 or HYK12.com. If you didn't want to do it by check or money order, if you just want to do it online, you can do it this way as well. All right. Okay, so we look forward to seeing and hearing from you guys during the classes, Tuesdays and Fridays, as well as the holy days coming up this weekend. And just keep an eye out for your text messages. I'll send out that message just to make sure we're ready for those holy days. Now, remember, these Day of Judas as well as the first and second day of Purim. They're not Sabbaths like a new moon, so we can cook on those days. We can also buy and sell on those days, but they're still days that we come together to remember, the great things the Most High did for us by remembering our forefathers and foremothers, right? Namely, Judas Maccabeus as well as Esther and Mordecai, right? Judas Maccabeus of the tribe of Levi, Esther and Mordecai of the tribe of Benjamin, right? Representing for the southern kingdom, right? So they're not Sabbaths, but they're days that we do come together and remember and have a memorial and a feast. All right, so look forward to those. And with that, we'll say Ashar Shabbat, wa Manakal Tawa, good afternoon, since we're kind of in the early afternoon. And to continue to watch and pray as we get close to that day when Christ makes a second coming. Continue to take heed to the prophecies as they happen, as Christ warned us during his famous Olivet Discourse, as they call it, the scholars call it, when he told the disciples, look out for wars, rumors of wars we see happening, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, which we see happening, right? And all at once, right? Not to mention other prophecies, right? Inspired by Christ to come on the prophets of old, talking about, looking out for the Most High when it comes to the elements, him coming in the whirlwind, right? Him come with a flame of devouring fire, right? Him come with hail, him come with all these other things, right? We see these things happening as well too. Even when the news doesn't have it on the front page, we do a simple Google search on, latest earthquakes, latest hurricanes, latest tornadoes, right? Latest forest fires. You'll see a lot of these prophecies are happening in tandem with each other, right? And it's easy for us to think, oh, just because the news cycle isn't talking about it, that it's no longer happening. But no, those things are still happening. Forest fires are continuing to happen. Tornadoes and hurricanes, earthquakes are continuing to happen. We just had that recent one that happened over there in Turkey, around a Turkey/Syria border. We're reading about Syria today. How ironic. Well, that's more of a recent one. But you have plenty of earthquakes too that may not be in places where you have like a major city or big population, but you have different websites. At least here in the States, they have one called the USGS. I think it's called USGS.gov, which is United States Geographical Survey, something like that. Yeah, USGS.gov, if I'm not mistaken. You search, geographical survey. They keep track of different earthquakes that happen on the earth, and they're not all just in places where people populate. Sometimes you have them in the waters, right, or by the islands, where they won't give them that much attention. But that's still part of the prophecy, whether they hit people or not. It's just the ones that hit where, civilization is, or where a lot of people are. Obviously, those are the ones that the news is going to focus on, because they want to focus on, the misery and the suffering, right, of people who have lost lives and, lost, property and everything else. They want to focus on those. But yeah, earthquakes happen even off the coast, in the waters, right, in the Pacific and the Atlantic, right, in the Indian Ocean, right, et cetera, even up in the poles. Those are all part of that prophecy too. And that's what Christ is speaking to, as well as the other prophets and prophetesses. So, take heed to all those things. Like I said earlier, as we closer to that day when Christ makes a second coming, because God's true and every man's a liar, right? The Most High is not a man, he shall lie, not that the Son of Man, he should repent. Which, that's Romans 3:3 and 4. Romans chapter 3, verse 3 and 4. And I just quoted also Numbers 23 and 19. So, Malachi Tawah again, wa Ashar Shabbat. And with that, let's do the closing prayers. Oh, and for folks that are still listening, next week, I forgot to mention, First Thessalonians chapters 3 and 4 for next week's reading. I didn't mention that, so apologies. So First Thessalonians 3 and 4. It's gonna be next Sabbath reading.
Barakatha Yahweh by Shemi Hawashai, Asherah Nathanawa, Paria Gapan Thawada Aman. La Yahweh by Shemi Hawashai, Yashara. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Magwa, Panyua Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh Basham Yahushai Babakushai Shemai Lanawe Aithat Yam Yan Aithat Shalak Mike Allah Wala Allahayim Tazuadakim Lashmar Ayu Barak Rabhab Magan Wakaziyak Banya Yash Allah Washalak Lanawa Rabium Kakamad Rabium Da'ai Rabium Bayanad Rabium Sabalanwa Rabium Amawan Rabium Aqua Rabium Mahabium Rabium Haganad Rokanayad Wasalak Kau Katayamnawa La Akim Wa Akiwa Wayash Allah Thum Yed Why Willam Basham Yahweh the Wada Aman. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers and sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh Basham Yahweh Shai Barak Nawa Wayashala Wabat Yasapariam Shemai Yashavale Yahweh Elohai Nawa Yahweh Akad. English translation. We said Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. And then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. All right, so with that, we'll say a Shar Shabbat once again. Have a blessed rest of the day. Shalom.
Shalom.